everybody, this is Mr. Leonard-White with your next lesson. We're going to step away from our instruments in this one, and we're going to talk a little bit about our bows. I know everyone has been really excited about using our bows, and that's something that we're going to talk about today. I have one of each of the bows with me. I'm going to start with the biggest. I've got the bass bow here, and then from the bass, I go down to the cello. For any of you watching at home that are wondering what the differences are, this is the difference. My bass bow is just a little bit longer than my cello bow. It's a little bit thicker. It's got more hair on it to help those bigger strings get along. I've got a viola bow, which ironically is also longer than the cello bow. Okay, it's got a skinnier stick. It's a little bit lighter. And then the violin bow, which this violin bow and viola bow I have are the same length, and it just depends on the size of your violin or viola, on what size bow you have. But I can tell them apart because at the bottom, this frog is what we call a frog, and it has a rounded edge. And over here the violin bow has a pointy edge. So I can tell apart my violin and viola bows from that. Also, my viola bow is just a little bit heavier, but it is also older, so that might be a factor too. Okay, let's talk about bow parts and maintenance. I'm going to use the bass bow for an example. These are all examples of French bows, so they all do look similar. The stick here always curves in towards our hair, not out the other way like a bow and arrow, even though the concept is the same, that we have hair or strings, and we have a piece of wood, and if I wanted to I could sit here and pull on it, but we're not going to do that because that would be very bad for our bow. Rule number one, we never ever want to touch the hair of our bow. It causes it to be grungy. The oils from your fingers will get into it, and it will basically make it unplayable, and then we'll have to get it rehaired or get a new bow replacement. Something else that can happen to bows is that this hair, you can kind of see on this bass bow, the hair will occasionally fall out, and so with this bass bow, this whole area right here should have hair coming out of it, but it does not, because it is probably in need of a rehairing itself. So back to the parts of our bow, we have the stick, as I mentioned. On the opposite side of the stick is the hair, which we're not going to touch no matter what. Down here at the end, there is a screw that helps loosen and tighten your bow. The black part, some of us have eyes in our frogs, and that is what helps me remember, because I always had a little tiny white eye in the frog, and it made it look kind of like a frog. But that is what we call the frog of the bow. There is this silver metal clip that I always refer to as the nickel part. It's made out of nickel sometimes, and it's what helps keep our hair in the frog. On the other side, usually have a plastic or a metal wound grip, a bow grip on the stick, and that obviously is where we will grip it later. The opposite of the frog is the tip of the bow. So the tip is this marvelous pointy end, the frog is the opposite end. That is really all that there is to know about the parts of our bow. So now that I've talked a little bit about the parts, when you get your bow out of your case, I really hope that it kind of looks like this. Okay? And the hair will probably be so loose that it's flopping in the wind. If it's not, that's fine too. But the first thing that you do is you take that screw end and you tighten it, just nice and gently, until the hair doesn't flop anymore. Okay? If I over tighten it, which I don't recommend you try at home, then all sorts of bad things can happen. I hope this bow doesn't break on me, because that would be awful. But you can see I've over tightened, and now my stick and my hair are almost getting to be perfectly parallel, and that's not something we want. We want that stick to angle in or swoop in towards our bow hair. Okay. violins and violas, as our bow gets smaller, it takes a lot less for us to do to tighten the hair. One full turn almost over tightened this bow, whereas on the base bow it took me several turns to get that bow hair tight. Okay, once your hair is tight, or tightened I should say, so it's not loose, one of the ways that I always check, and just because there's less oil on the back of our hand, I give it a little bounce and see if it bounces. Sometimes our bow hair will look tight like that, but when I bounce, I hit myself with the stick. You don't want to be so tight that you hit yourself with the stick. Another rule of thumb is that you just want it pinky's width between the hair and the stick. For example, this stick is not far enough away, and now that I could put my pinky nail in there, I've probably got enough room. So let's talk about bow hold. To review, we had our pencil holds, our pencil calisthenics that we've been asking you to practice, and I want to just review the setup. So remember that this hand that my pencil is in is my left hand, that left hand that's in charge of making the notes on your instrument, because it's going to help the right hand get set up. So the right hand here, we're going to make that face, those two fingers over the thumb, two little ears up in the wind, and we're going to chomp down on that stick. Okay, the thumb should be across from my other two fingers, and everything is nice and curved. And then from there I can relax my fingers and I should have full control of my pencil. The same is going to go on our bow. So what I'd like you to do is to take the stick of your bow, and the first thing that I want you to do, there should be a point that is called a balance point, and it's different on every bow. And if I just gently hold the stick with each opposite finger, I should be able to find the place and reset it to where I'm not holding this. You can see it's wobbling a little bit, and it's a little bit heavy over there, but this is the balance point of this bow. And you notice it's about a third of the way from the frog. Let's try another balance point while you're finding yours. Here's the balance point of this bass bow. Again, almost a third of the stick up from the bottom. And that's just a good place to hold our bow. It means we have control of our bow. If you hold your bow out at this end, then you've got all this weight, and it's not going to be very helpful. But your left hand somewhere in that balance point really helps. And that's a good thing to remember later when we start playing with our bow, because the balance point gets a lot of good sound and a lot of good articulations. We're going to do the same setup on this bow that we did on our pencil. Make that face, the two teeth over the bottom of my thumb, and I'm going to chomp down on the stick. You can see everything's nice and round. Relax your first and fourth fingers. Violins actually and violas, let's rub the side of our finger on that grip and tap our pinky on top. If you're a cello or a bass, we just want to stay nice and relaxed. Okay, again, violins and violas, rub, 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 tap, tap, tap. Cellos and bass, we're just going to relax our hand. Okay, once I've relaxed my hand onto my bow, I'm still going to hold my bow with these two middle fingers and my thumb. 1 and 4 are in charge of making sure that it doesn't do this. Okay, but if I have this, then I should be able to let go, and I have full control of my bow with my right hand. I can go back, and I can go forth with it. Okay, let me try that again on another bow. Violin bow this time. You can see the difference in the shape and the size. Shake out that bow hand. Let's try it again. Make that face. Chomp on the stick. Violins and violas, I always think that with us, it's a little bit more fingertips. I'm holding with my fingertips down here. Cellos and bass, we're holding more in our knuckles, like a big sword. So violins and violas, rub, 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 Tap, tap, tap. And see, that makes my hand curve this way just a little bit. So then when I set my bow up on its frog, so it's pointing to the ceiling, I should be able to look at my hand and see that this thumb, the knuckle's pointing out towards the ceiling. We don't want to point it towards the floor. Okay, it's just what I've said with everybody else. It's that perfect roundness. We don't want any of this. And then I should have full control of my bow. Cello's bases, make sure that you've relaxed your fingers and that they're hanging onto it, almost like a cliff. Ah! Ah! Okay. We have control of our bows. I'm going to do a few bow calisthenics with you now. So if you would, please turn your bow up towards the ceiling, the tip towards the ceiling, and we're going to draw little tiny circles. Little tiny circles in the sky with our bow. Okay, they might be circles, they might be bean-shaped, but try the best you can to make a perfect circle. My arm is not moving. It's just with my fingers. I can hold my right arm with my left arm if I'd like. Trying to make those circles just a little bit bigger, and a little bit bigger, and a little bit bigger, and a little bit bigger. And how big can I make it? And how big can I make it? How big could you make it? Without moving your arm. Okay, let's relax it. Let's make that circle tiny again. And stop. Okay, while I still have a hold of my arm or while I'm not moving it, I like to shake the end of our bow like it's a little salt shaker. Shake, shake, shake. Shake that salt into the soup. Shake it. We're going to season. Doot, doot, doot. Doot, doot, doot. Okay, once that salt is in our soup, right, we don't want a big, we're not salting our soup with a knife. We're not assaulting our soup. We're just salting our soup, doot, 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 with our wrist. And then once it's salted, now I'd like to stir the soup. So now you can get your arm involved. Okay, feel that wrist. Just a nice big circle. Stir the soup. Stir. I hope you're doing this and not just watching me, because that would be weird if I'm doing this by myself. Stir the soup and stir the soup. Okay, so we've done circles. We've salted the soup. We've stirred the soup. This brings me to one last thing. One last final test of your skill. And for this, I'm going to go back to the bass bow just because it's shorter. Okay, if I have my perfect bow hold, and remember, we do not touch the hair no matter what, no matter ever, never, 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 ever, never. I should be able to crawl just like a spider, doot, 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 up the stick of my bow. Take some getting used to. You might drop your bow. I might drop my bow today. We'll see. And that wonderfully perfect bow hand, it's going to stay nice and round, and we're going to go all the way out to the tip. And if you're there with me, if you're at the tip, now we're going to go back to the frog, but not touching it with anything else. We're not helping it, we're not popping it with our knee, we're just crawling back down the stick. And that's okay. The first or second time or third time or fifth time, you will probably drop your bow. I just dropped my bow. Maybe you do this in a room with carpet so that you don't drop your bow on tile. Just slowly. And the whole time, you just want it to be a perfect bow hand. And then you should be able to get back down to the frog, and boom, I'm back. And I still have full control of my bow. Do some windshield wipers. Back and forth, just from that wrist. And that is all about holding our bow. If you ever get tired of holding your bow, always have your left hand help out. It can grab the stick, your right hand can shake it out and relax. Okay, you want to get rid of that tension so that we can try it again. And with anything, practice is going to make permanent. So however you practice holding your bow now is the way it's going to stick. All right, remember, we want our hand to be almost perpendicular to our bow. We don't want anything from the side. We don't want any of this. Okay, upside down, no, no, no. There's a stamp in Britain where someone's holding their bow like this. That's backwards. Don't do that. Okay. On the stick, and everything's nice and rounded. Okay. Practice these bow calisthenics, and I can't wait to check in with you next time. Have a great day.